Ron. Thanks for being here, folks. Now to CBS.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Ratto reporting tonight from our CBS News Iowa Caucus headquarters in Des Moines. Good evening. Campaign 88, the Iowa caucuses. The real voting starts tonight. Cloudy, cold caucus evening here in Iowa. The important first cut of Campaign 88 in deciding who lives and who dies in the race for president. Among Democrats, there appears to be a tight first tier. Richard Gephardt, Paul Simon, Michael Dukakis. Among Republicans, George Bush left the state and flew to New Hampshire after making one last effort to beat Bob Dole. One of the great unknowns of the night, Pat Robertson. Does the former TV preacher's so-called invisible army make a big show or no show? All kinds of core groups of Iowa activists are turning out at thousands of caucuses tonight. What they do will likely have impact far beyond Iowa and far beyond the relatively few delegates at stake. Our CBS News chief political correspondent Bruce Morton begins our Iowa caucus night coverage with a look at the Democrats and the tight to the last minute Gephardt-Simon Dukakis race for first place.
Candidates stalked Iowans this caucus day, and most of the frontrunners were at least cautiously optimistic.
But I think we're going to do well.
And we're going to do well.
We're going to do well, and we're going to win tonight.
We have to do well tonight, and we will do well.
Who does just how well probably will depend on turnout. A high turnout helps Gephardt, who reached a lot of possible voters with a $500,000 television ad campaign. A low turnout helps Simon, who depends more on organization to get out known supporters. Michael Dukakis leans on organization too. And a lot of the long shots here say they can do well if a lot of first-time caucus goers show up.
There are going to be more people at the caucus night who have never been before than ever before in history. We're going to have a great night.
Gary Hart, whose campaign has almost disappeared in Iowa, stopped by his Des Moines headquarters today to thank his volunteers. And Albert Gore, who was running as a Southern regional candidate, was in Washington saying it all didn't matter.
If you're going duck hunting, you go where the ducks are. If you're hunting for delegates, you go where the delegates are.
But it does matter for most of them. Simon campaigned very hard today and actually visited Chris Scarlettis' house twice. She's still undecided. Maybe Bruce Babbitt was wiser than all the rest. His campaign could end here unless he surprises someone. But the candidate and his wife and their kids didn't seem too worried by that. They went bowling.
If turnout is the key here, the weather at least won't keep anybody home. Parts of the state had an inch or two of snow today, but for Iowa, in the wintertime, that's not enough reason to stay indoors, Dan.
Thanks, Bruce. Bob Schieffer is reporting tonight on the Republican race, the Bush-Dole expectations game here in Iowa, and the worrisome for them Pat Robertson factor.
The closing days of a campaign, and anything goes for a photo. Frontrunner Bob Dole made an unscheduled stop for ice cream, then discovered he had no money to pay for it. And then there was the vice president. He got a pig and promptly presented it to his wife. Bush's headquarters was humming today. Even Bush's daughter was manning the phone banks. But Bush concedes he has an uphill fight.
And what I want to do is surprise. Rest of the country looks strong. You've read those national polls. But I want to win this. I believe I'm going to. But I want to win it with Iowa at my side.
But if Bush conceded he was behind, Dole was taking nothing for granted. His campaign was in fast forward all day. He managed 6 stops on this final day and a dawn to dusk search for more supporters.
How many signed anybody up today?
We're trying.
So am I.
Still the unknown wild card, and increasingly optimistic Pat Robertson unveiled the Operations Center where he'll conduct his own vote count tonight. He has 100 phone lines coming into his headquarters, 2,500 poll watchers across the state. He is now openly saying he may beat one of the frontrunners.
I'm going to be bringing thousands of Democrats into the process, and the dynamics in Iowa this night will not be what they have been in past elections. As a result, until we get a good feeling of all the state, I think any preliminary estimates are going to be inaccurate.
And that's been one of the ironies here. While Robertson and the other long shot Jack Kemp have begun to predict in these closing days that they'll do better than expected, the frontrunners Dole and Bush have spent all of this week playing down expectations about how well they're going to do. Okay? Bob, let's look for some telltale signs for the viewer as we go along tonight. What should they be looking and listening for?
Well, I think on the Republican side of this is watch Pat Robertson and see what happens on that front. If Pat Robertson starts to do well, we may have a whole new ball game here. And by that I mean if he should somehow sneak past Vice President Bush, that's going to throw things into a tailspin, I think.
I think for the Democrats, Dan, the thing to watch for is turnout. We should get some early reading from our entrance polls as people go into the caucuses. And, a high turnout is good for Gephardt. A low turnout is good for the people who bet more heavily on organization.
And what about the possible influence on New Hampshire?
Well, I think it depends on what happens on the Republican side. If George Bush wins here tonight, in my view, George Bush has won the Republican nomination. If he can beat Bob Dole in Iowa, he'll win the Republican nomination, in my view. On the other hand, if he should finish behind Pat Robertson, I think he will have suffered a grave wound, and he's going to have tough going in New Hampshire, may even have tough going down south.
I think for the Democrats, Dan, the question is which Middle Westerner wins here, Simon or Gephardt. I think that whichever one loses, even if it's quite a respectable second, is going to have a very hard time going into New Hampshire, have a very hard time going into the South, and perhaps most critical of all, have a very hard time raising money.
Bob, you've covered the Republican race right the way through. Does anybody in the Republican Party really know what may happen here this evening?
Well, that's why they're going to have these caucuses, Dan. We'll find out in just a few minutes.
No, but they've been guessing along. But I have a sense, and the reason I asked the question is that they've thrown up their hands and say, I don't have any idea what's going to happen out here.
Well, I think most people think that Bob Dole ought to win here. He's in a neighboring state, it's a farm state, and so on. But Bob Dole has a good organization. It's Chuck Grassley's organization. He's the senator here. George Bush has a very good organization here. And then I keep coming back to this great unknown factor, Pat Robertson. Nobody really can judge what the outcome of all this thing is going to be.
And with the Democrats, Bruce?
Well, nobody knows on my side. I've talked to card-carrying experts today who said Gephardt's got it, Simon's got it. We're all going to be surprised.
Well, the returns will start coming in fairly soon. Look forward to being with you both, Bob and Bruce. Thanks. Organization, weather, turnout, sweating the details. Those are some of the elements in this very complex caucus process. While we're spending a good part of tonight trying to analyze the outcome, CBS News National Affairs correspondent Leslie Stahl reports now on what and who goes into one of these caucuses.
Do not overlook your friends and family. Go after them with everything you have.
Man your battle stations, load your ammunition. Caucus training sessions and get-out-the-vote drives are just like military operations.
You do anything to get them there.
Anything?
Anything.
Republican caucus goers have a fairly uncomplicated process. They vote in a secret straw poll.
You should go with them and watch them count the ballots.
But the Democrats have a convoluted process. One of the caucuses is being held here at this retirement home. You physically stand up for your candidate. Simon supporters will stand here, do caucuses here, Jackson's there, and so forth. But your candidate needs 15% of the people in the room, and that leads to a lot of arm twisting.
There's some intimidation factor. I think a regular Democrat would have difficulty standing up for Hart this time around.
With controversial candidates, peer pressure can be intense. The process is combative, and that appeals to a certain type of voter. Last time, Democratic caucus goers were wealthier, better educated, and twice as liberal as the Iowa population. And special interest groups like unions and farmers wielded disproportionate power.
Good. Is your husband also planning on going?
In 1984, more than half of the caucus goers were over 50, a percentage that could increase tonight after an intensive $700,000 effort by the American Association of Retired Persons, which had its own Get Out the Vote campaign.
Yes, this is Debbie with AARP Vote in Des Moines. I'm calling to confirm that you'll be at your caucus on Monday night at 7.
Paul Bechtold is going to his first caucus tonight as a precinct captain. He's 91.
And then what we want you to do is count everyone over the age of 50, so we can determine our turnout.
But one of the greatest distortions is the importance placed on the event.
It's reported as if this were the Super Bowl, rather than the first game of the season.
But for all the criticisms and complaints, tonight's returns will be the first real results from real people. Leslie Stahl, CBS News at the 65th Precinct in Des Moines.
And still to come on the CBS Evening News, the Soviets set an iffy date for the beginning of a possible troop pullout from Afghanistan, maybe. And a panel of historians finds Austrian President Waldheim has been lying about his Nazi past.
Mommy buys me cards to send to my grandma's. But first I gotta sign them. Grandma's needs lots of colors. And dinosaurs. You're going to Grandma. You stay there. My grandmas love dinosaurs.
Express your love with Valentine's from Hallmark, the place to go when you care enough to send the very best.
In the dark about which new car to buy. The new Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme will enlighten you.
If every time you look around it seems like your rug is dirty, try Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner. Because it contains the ingredient Fiberpel, it keeps your heavy traffic areas cleaner longer than the other liquid spray. Trust new Woolite Spot and Stain Rug Cleaner.
When you get a cold or an allergy,
you need some herbal tea.
You also get a lot of advice.
What you want to do is feed a cold.
A lot of advice.
Take Judy to call me in the morning.
But the best advice is what doctors have said millions of times. Take Dimetap. Dimetap in non-prescription formulas brings proven relief. So take the advice of doctors and pharmacists.
The tea worked. Huh?
And take Dimetap. The best advice you can take.
Mikhail Gorbachev today set a date and a time frame for possibly withdrawing Soviet troops from Afghanistan, provided that Afghanistan and Pakistan reach a Soviet-approved peace agreement at UN-sponsored talks next month. In Washington, the Reagan administration said it was encouraged by this Gorbachev statement. Wyatt Andrews reports.
It is the first time Gorbachev has offered to pull Soviet troops out of Afghanistan within a 10-month timetable, beginning possibly as early as May 15th. No Soviet proposal has ever been that specific.
The establishment of an acceptable timetable for Soviet troop withdrawal has been a key requirement for forward progress in the Geneva process, and we welcome Gorbachev's apparent willingness to address this question.
The proposal came as a short announcement in the Soviet press with no details of what kind of government would be in power while the Soviets pulled out. Afghan leader Najibullah today said a national coalition government would be formed, but he did not say how he planned to share power with rebel forces.
We're waiting to see what the conditions are.
While the administration welcomed the proposal, almost no one thinks a 10-month withdrawal is fast enough. Both Pakistan and the United States are pressuring the Soviets to withdraw sooner. Still, Gorbachev's proposal is seen as an opening.
The explicit desire to pull out and a decision that they've taken to pull out, the fixing of the dates, all those are very, very positive signs.
Gorbachev's 10-month withdrawal offer, acceptable or not, is also the strongest signal yet of how badly the Soviets want out of Afghanistan and how quickly they are losing patience with the Afghan regime. What was seen as a message of compromise in the West was also a clear warning to Najibullah. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, the State Department.
A Soviet pullback or pullout is not likely to end the war in Afghanistan. The rebels fear what they would call a sellout by President Reagan and Secretary of State Shultz. They want no part of a political compromise, and they say that they will fight on with or without U.S. aid. Bert Quint reports on the mood of the Mujahideen.
These Afghan rebels say no to a coalition government with communists, no to a role for the exiled king of Afghanistan, no to any deal they don't make for themselves.
This is the sole right of one nation to determine their future without any pressures from abroad.
Many of these men were fighting homegrown communists long before the Soviets came, and they're prepared to keep fighting until there is an Islamic government in Kabul. And they say they've stored enough weapons to do it, even if the United States cuts off aid in return for Soviet withdrawal. Their code calls for hospitality, honor, and revenge. They've won honor on the battlefield, and now the Soviets and their friends in Kabul feel the time for revenge is near. There is fear, too, that men who stand together now against the communists may end up at each other's throats when the common enemy, the Soviets, are gone. If the Soviets leave, most of the rebels would be happy to go back to their own areas of the country, but some have national political ambitions. Gulbuddin Hekmatyar is one of the most astute and hated of the rebel chiefs. His fighters already have clashed with other guerrilla bands to establish turfs. Hekmatyar doesn't seem to share Ayatollah Khomeini's determination to export the fundamentalist revolution, but apparently does intend to extend it to nearby Muslim areas seized by the Soviets years ago.
They are still thinking that they are a separate nation, and they have to live under an Islamic system.
But all of that is for the future. For now, the rebels' aim is to drive the Soviets out with no strings attached. And while the diplomats talk, they continue to fight. Bert Quint, CBS News, on the Afghan border.
On the high frontier, the Pentagon is billing it as the most sophisticated test yet of President Reagan's Star Wars missile defense technology. A Delta rocket was fired up from Florida tonight, carrying an array of sensors and 15 small satellites. The satellites are to be ejected into space and then hunted. The idea is to see if Soviet missiles can be tracked in the event of war, and specifically whether a Star Wars system could successfully weed out dummy missiles from real killer enemy missiles. Defense Department officials insist tonight's test does not violate the 1972 ABM treaty with the Soviets. The Transportation Department is out today with its monthly report on airline performance. Airline delays were way up in December. Only 66.4% of flights arrived on time. And amid the continuing consumer concern over the effect of airline deregulation on service and safety, the Federal Trade Commission today insisted that deregulation has lowered prices and improved safety. The defense rested today in the influence peddling trial of Lynn Nofziger without ever calling Nofziger as a witness. Defense attorneys for President Reagan's former top political aide turned big money lobbyists say the prosecution didn't present enough evidence that required a response from Nofziger on the stand. Nofziger is charged with 4 felony counts of illegal lobbying.
Chrysler is proud to announce America's winners with $500 to $2,500 cash back. Right now, get award-winning cash back deals on over 50 different cars and trucks at your Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge, and Jeep Eagle dealers. Over 50 different models, and depending on the one you choose, get up to $2,500 cash back. Who else competes like Chrysler? Nobody.
There's one raisin cereal that stays crispier in milk than any other.
There's never been a crisp like this. It's crispy wheats and raisins.
If you're concerned about heart disease and your doctor advises exercise, the right foods, and an aspirin a day, you should know that heart specialists recommend Ecotrin more than Bayer when they're concerned about aspirin irritation because it's safety coded. Ecotrin, the one heart specialists recommend.
Walter, this is Mother. Mother, Walter wants to use the phone. Fine, right there.
Second-class phones, they're making second-class phones.
Oh, that silly phone. Use our AT&T phone in there.
For phones that work like phones are supposed to work, stick with the first-class phones of AT&T.
It's okay. It works.
A blue ribbon panel of historians today delivered its report on the World War II record of Austrian President Kurt Waldheim. As Tom Fenton reports, Waldheim did not take kindly to the panel's conclusions, and he managed to force some changes in the final report.
The commission appointed by the Austrian government to investigate President Waldheim's wartime activities gave in to government pressure today and deleted the accusation of moral guilt in war crimes. As presented tonight, the altered report concludes that President Waldheim lied and that he took no action to prevent the deportation of Jews and other civilians by the German army group in which he served. It absolves him, however, of direct personal involvement in atrocities. By the time Waldheim slipped into his office at the Hofburg Palace this morning, the findings of the report had been leaked to him. He decided they were unacceptably critical. When the 6-man commission of historians held its final meeting before lunch, it thought its work was completed.
As of right now, I think we've, like ivory soap, it's 99 and 44 100% pure.
But Waldheim's party began exercising pressure, and by this evening, the report's original conclusions have been replaced by a page that omitted any mention of moral guilt. The events turned into a near farce tonight when the commission arrived in the Austrian Chancellor's office without the report. Commission members became defensive as stories circulated about what happened.
Who made you...
Nobody pressed us.
Tonight, after the report was finally ready, Waldheim made a televised address to the nation and said he saw no reason to resign. What the Austrian government wanted was a report it could hold up to the world to prove that Waldheim was not guilty of war crimes. What it got was a report that may now be totally discredited. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Vienna.
A West German court today charged Mohammed Ali Hamati with murder in the 1985 hijacking of a TWA jetliner. A U.S. Navy diver, the young hero Robert Steedham, was murdered by the hijackers in Beirut. Hamati was arrested in Frankfurt a year ago. However, the West German government turned down a U.S. bid to extradite him, saying it feared for the lives of German hostages in Lebanon if Hamati were sent to the U.S. He could get life in prison if convicted on the West German charges. Efforts to get announcement of some kind of ceasefire in Central America appeared to get a setback today. Nicaraguan Contras postponed scheduled peace talks with the Sandinista government. Contra leaders said last week's House vote against more money for them undermined the peace process. They said they have already begun raising more private funds in the United States. Spokesman for President Reagan today denied charges by Panama's military strongman that a secret White House operation had sought his help in invading Nicaragua. On CBS News 60 Minutes last night, General Manuel Noriega told Mike Wallace that the plan was urged on him in 1985 by former National Security Advisor John Poindexter. Today, a White House spokesman officially denied that there was any such plan and called Noriega's claim the, quote, idle charges of a man indicted for drug running.
Yesterday, Liz Garland bicycled 20 miles. Today, she'll pay for it.
Boy, what did I do?
That's why her next move is to Metaprin. Metaprin contains the same medicine as Motrin, and nothing's proven faster for relief of body aches, muscle pain, or any kind of pain. It's also gentler to your stomach than aspirin. Metaprin works fast when you haven't got time for the pain.
Sometimes I don't know what to believe. What food's good for you, what's not. But I guess I can believe reports from the National Cancer Institute. They say some studies suggest a high-fiber, low-fat diet may reduce the risk of some kinds of cancer. So I made some changes.
Like eating Kellogg's All-Bran. Just 1 tablespoon of All-Bran has more fiber than a whole serving of most other cereals.
Am I going to change what I eat for breakfast? You better believe it.
High-fiber Kellogg's All-Bran.
Day after day, more people depend on Subaru wagons than any imported wagon in America. And with good reason. They're reliable and durable. In fact, if Subaru didn't make your life easier...
Honey, is dinner ready?
Who would? Subaru. We built our reputation by building a better car.
The Census Bureau reported today that the number of Americans living on farms dropped below 5 million last year. That's the fewest in at least a century. At agriculture's high tide in 1916, some 32.5 million Americans lived on farms. Today, about half the nation's farm residents live here in the Midwest. But even in Iowa, widely perceived as a farm state, just about 12% of the total population actually lives on farms. Here in Iowa tonight, core groups of activists are vying and caucusing. What they're doing is being seen and magnified nationwide. Clout and consequences for the hopes of the hopefuls running for president. It's far from the perfect model of democracy on the hoof. Iowa is not a sort of little America wrapped up in one state. Still, in important ways, Iowans do hold a mirror to America and American values. Real people, real power, real trying to do the right thing. If there's an image of this heartland state, this is it. Sunday morning church services in Winterset.
Let us pray.
Farm families who take their work, their worship, and their politics seriously.
It's our responsibility to
pick our representatives, because they're going to affect us, whether we like it or not, our government.
This is a state of Grant wood scenes, of farms and hogs, more rural than the rest of the country, overwhelmingly white, Protestant, and middle class. a nice place to live. But is it the right place to shape a presidential campaign for an entire nation? Many outsiders say it's not. But just ask the folks eating Sunday dinner after church in Lally's Cafe.
I think people are jealous of us. We just get a little bit of the spotlight. But
Debbie Groth and her husband Marvin raise hogs and corn on their farm just outside Winterset. They think Iowa voters get a better chance than anyone to look over the candidates.
About all you have to do is walk across the street and you can shake their hand and you can look them square in the eye and ask them any questions that are important. So I guess we're really lucky.
we talk about foreign policy, domestic policy, how the candidate is going to relate to all segments of the population, how he's going to relate to the Soviets or Israelis or anybody like that.
Political interest starts early in Winterset. High school basketball is the focus on Friday night. Young voters in Iowa generally don't vote in heavy numbers, but for some, caucuses are center stage this night.
And I think people get very excited that these people who are at least semi-famous are coming to their town and taking the time to talk to them. I think it gets them very excited about the political process.
It's a lot of kind of sorting out the garbage and getting to the real bottom line of it. And Iowans are very good at that.
Iowa isn't just farms and small towns. Des Moines is 40 miles from Winterset, but it's a world away. And voters in the Wintersets of this state tonight will be setting the tone for the nation's presidential campaign. And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from our Iowa caucus headquarters in Des Moines. We'll report major caucus developments and the results throughout the evening, and we'll have a special wrap-up broadcast tonight at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time. We hope you'll stay here with us. See you later.
An important message on heart attacks from the makers of Bufferin, Buffered Aspirin.
Just 4 years after winning at Wimbledon, I had a heart attack and bypass surgery. My life had to change. So with my doctor's advice, I follow a regimen that includes a healthy diet, weight control, regular exercise, and taking aspirin every day.
If you've had a heart attack, only your doctor knows what's best for you, so follow his advice.
I did, and now I'm enjoying life again.
Dada.
Automotive history is about to repeat itself. The Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme is born again.
I just got dentures, but it hasn't slowed me down.
Sounds a bit of 45, want to hear 45, 45.
Fix-It and forget it. Fix-It helps fix loose spots for a strong hold that lasts longer than any leading cream.
Two, I hear 25, want to hear 25, 25.
Use Fix-It and forget it.
Looks like a hungry group this morning.
You bet.
Good, because to stack up to the vitamins in one bowl of Total, it takes almost 3 bowls of Special K.
Trudy, all of the grape nuts.
Takes 4 bowls of that.
Watch this. Shredded wheat.
12 bowls.
Good, Delaney.
Separate checks, please.
With 1 bowl of Total, you get 100% of 9 vitamins and iron, and it's the only cereal that's a major source of calcium.
We always love the stuff.
Total, a stack of nutrition in just 1 bowl.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow from Des Moines, the winners and the losers of the Iowa caucuses.
And we'll look ahead to next week's New Hampshire primary tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
And coming up on Eyewitness News, all eyes are on Iowa as the state kicks off the process of picking our new president. We'll have a live report from